Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 135. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and it's great to be with you again. We have a really exciting episode for you today. If any of you out there have ever thought to yourself, maybe I should start a record label, or what is it like running a record label in 2018? I have the answers. Well, not me personally, but my buddy Tony does. Tony is the founder and sole employee of Savior Generation Records, a Michigan-based label that has produced nearly 50 releases to date, including the early works of Hot Mulligan, another recent guest on the show, and many other bands. Tony has developed quite a niche for himself in the world of alternative music by signing a lot of bands from the Midwest, specifically in the Detroit, Lansing, Michigan area, and through doing so has cultivated this community of fans and artists that not only support each other, but go out of the way to make other people aware of one another's work. It's kind of a beautiful thing, and Tony's on the show to talk a little bit about that, but mostly about the realities of running a label in 2018. We all know the music industry is changing. Streaming has completely reworked the way people make money, and it's hard out there. You know, there are major labels, not major, but big alternative labels that have folded in recent years. Side One Dummy Records being a great example. They went from being an active label with a ton of artists and a lot of releases planned for 2018 to becoming a catalog label and dropping all those artists and giving them back their music and just kind of quietly going the way of the buffalo. Savior Generation has defied the odds by being in business for 5 years now, and the future looks brighter than ever. Tony's going to tell me about how he's accomplished that, but also give practical advice to anyone out there hoping to have a label of their own. We talk about the benefits of releasing digital versus physical media, how to promote a new release, whether or not it's worth it to buy ad space on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, as well as some very specific release style questions. Tony just put out this amazing EP from a brand new band called Pinch, who prior to signing with the label had never released anything. They hadn't really played any shows, and they really had no media presence whatsoever. Tony took the band on because he believed in what they're doing, and through the community that he's cultivated, was able to get the band out there and into the world. The release has been out for a couple of weeks now, and according to him, it's selling really well. I'm going to play a little bit of music from the band in a bit, but before we get there, I want to tell you a few quick things. First and foremost, this episode of Inside Music, as well as all episodes of Inside Music, are brought to you by Holix, the music industry's leading digital promotional distribution platform. Now, what that means is that Holix works with record labels and independent artists from all over the world to discreetly share new and unreleased music with influencers and tastemakers to help get the albums out into the world. You know, today it's harder than ever to get your music heard, but services like Holix make it easy to create customizable presentations that really grab the attention of those out there in a position of power, the gatekeepers of the business, if you will, and helps you to get that music out. For more information on how they do this, as well as access to a free 30-day trial, visit Holix.com. That's Haulix.com. I also want to encourage you to follow the show on Twitter. It's at Inside Music Pod or Inside Music POD. And I want to mention that all episodes of Inside Music, including the one you're listening to right now, are available on YouTube. There are several days worth of content on there with conversations from some of the biggest names in music, as well as some that you may have never heard of. We talked to people like Baby Metal, as well as the band Greek Fire, who was just on the show a couple of weeks ago. There's also a ton of industry professionals talking about their experience trying to make it, making it, and in some cases, leaving the world of music behind. It's a really cool thing that we're doing, and I really hope that you'll check it out. Finally, the music you're about to hear, as I previously mentioned, is from this amazing band called Pinch. Pinch, just like when you pinch yourself to make sure it's real, and that's how good this music is. You're going to be doing that. And I know that that's corny, but I really believe in this band, and I like what they're doing. So I'm going to play a little bit of a song by Pinch, which you can purchase right now through Savior Generation Records or stream through all the major services. And then we're going to get into the conversation with Tony. Thank you so much for listening, and be on the lookout for more episodes in the very near future. All right? Enjoy the show.
Eyes closed tight.
Yeah, I was in Minnesota last week, and it was not as snowy. There was some snow on the ground at times, but really it was more like 16 degrees outside and just, bitterly cold.
Yeah. No thanks. Not
No,
yet.
yeah, my girlfriend had never been to Minnesota before, so like we would wake up and she'd be like, "What's it like outside?" And I'd open my phone and be like, "It's 10 degrees right now." That's that's what
Yeah.
it's like. And she'd be like, "I don't want to go out there," but then she realized like they don't have like the wind isn't as much of an issue out there, so it's just kind of it doesn't really feel that like 20 degrees and 10 degrees doesn't feel that different unless there's wind. It's just cold.
That's what we that's what we tell ourselves. Yeah.
It's how we survive. It's how we survive. So, man, I really appreciate you making time to do this with me again. For anyone listening, Tony actually came to my apartment and we did this whole episode once. And then I went to edit the audio on my computer, and it was just like a garbled mess. I don't know why. I don't know what's up with my microphone. So I got a new cable, and then we recorded it on my phone. But there's this weird glitch with iOS 12 where if you record over a certain length of time, it just doesn't save the voice message. I don't know why. Um, I actually had this problem with another interview I did, and then a third one that went like 35 minutes. It took like 3 days before it showed up in my phone. So maybe like one day in the distant future, I'll open up my voice memos and there will be one from you and I having that conversation. But I appreciate you making time to do it again.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it.
And things have changed. So you came over before we even did the Pinch premiere, actually announcing Pinch as a band in general. So let's start right there. So you have, I guess, the latest release for your label, Savior Generation Records, is the first EP from Pinch, correct?
Yeah, that's the 3-song EP that just came out November 2nd, so a couple weeks ago now. And so far so good. It's been gaining a little traction. We did release the single on Oxford FM, and that was good. I think we generated some good traffic there, and started getting the word out. And they're starting to play shows now too. So hopefully we just keep things rolling.
Absolutely. Now, for people that don't know, Pinch is you're literally introducing them to the world. Like before the band put out that first single, no one had heard the band. They were just like not on the map for the most part. Am I right about that?
Yeah, yeah. It's they wanted to keep things real quiet. They had recorded, had been sitting on them for a couple months while we were trying to figure out exactly what to do, and the plan just ended up being like, let's just kind of throw it all out there at once. Like, let's announce the band, the song, the video, just kind of throw it out there and see what kind of reaction we get.
Mm. Now, for you as a label owner, do you like the challenge that that presents of not have like finding a band that like just doesn't have anything going on, and the challenge of kind of working uphill from there, or what was it about Pinch that attracted you to them?
It was a cool idea because usually the bands that I work with are somewhat established. Either they've been kicking around for a couple months or years, and are ready to do something a little bit different, or they've been friends of mine. In this case, Pinch are friends of mine also, but it was kind of just a unique opportunity. And yeah, it was fun to kind of really start from the bottom with nothing out there as far as any notoriety. They didn't have anything on Spotify. The Bandcamp wasn't up. All the social media stuff, there were placeholders, but nothing was really being used much. Um, so it was fun to kind of grow that, and as they keep playing shows and more comes up, it's going to be cool to watch it grow. It's something different. I don't know if it's better or worse in our case on the level of things that we're doing, but it's different, and it is a different challenge. But it's exciting. It's fun. It made that release day really cool when that video came out. Just start seeing people talk about Pinch. That was fun.
Yeah, we'll get to this in a second, but it definitely kind of comes from a similar market as some of the other artists you worked with, and like I guess that kind of helps. You kind of have leverage this particular niche of the scene, if you will, where there's a lot of people that are willing to kind of support everyone else. And like you said, the members of Pinch they're kind of known in the music community, even if they weren't known as being part of this specific band.
Yeah, the majority, if not all, of the Savior Generation releases have been with bands and artists from Flint and Detroit. And while that wasn't necessarily intentional to start with, it's just kind of how things grew. And that basically just came from the support that we were getting from the releases we were doing. Those are the people that cared about what we were doing, and the people that were approaching me for help to get the records out. So there is a small, built-in a fan base of people that will support what we're doing and help get the word out. So yeah, they're part of that kind of like Flint, Saginaw, Lansing, I guess, Michigan scene. They've all been around for years playing in different bands. So they're known individually, but this is the first time they've been presented as Pinch.
And Pinch has put out a music video that came with the premiere of the single. Now, for a label like Save Your Generation, is making videos kind of on the band? I mean, I assume you probably you probably don't have a giant budget for videos and things of that nature. So when artists want to do that kind of thing and they approach you, is the label get behind it, or like how does that material kind of come available? Like when I guess, and speaking while we're on that topic, just general rollout for an album like this or any other Save Your Generations release? Like, is there a discussion of like, this is what the label will do, and if you want to do these things, you can, or how do you kind of negotiate it being like a smaller label?
Every release is different, and a lot of it has to do with, I guess, the way I've approached it has been, I'll take this as seriously as you do. So if the band's willing to work and put more into it than I am also, and we're both going to get more out of it that way. Well, the nice thing about Pinch and the way it works in this one is Bryce and his brothers are very talented, and they do this for a living. So they were able to shoot and edit the video, do all the production, everything themselves. So this was kind of built in. It's kind of a bonus of Bryce, I guess you could say, that he can handle that stuff on his own. In other cases, it's been both ways. A lot of times the band takes it upon themselves. They say, we want to do a video. We're going to do a video. Here you go. In some other cases, I have helped out and got behind it and helps pay for some of the costs of doing the video. But it's different for every release.
Now, do you do any paid advertising on social media for your releases?
I have, and I've stopped. I don't know if it's worked. Yeah, you get the Facebook ad stats and the Instagram stats, and I don't really see a big return from that. I mean, you see impressions and hits and likes. Is that for what we're doing and the people that we're appealing to? I don't think that really translates into or publicity or sales or, I guess, tangible fans for the bands that are going to come see them. So no, at this point, we're not really doing that anymore.
That makes sense to me. I mean, I kind of get split on it because I watch a ton of Instagram stories, so I can see the value in utilizing that platform. But I feel like, for starters, I don't know that the location tools on Instagram are that great because like when Beto O'Rourke was running in Texas, I felt like I was getting promoted ads for his campaign, and I didn't really understand why. Like I have no place in Texas. How like what is the value to that? But then there's also artists that I already engage with a lot. There's an example right now on Instagram, or recently, there's this rapper called Cousin Stiz who I've been following for years on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and everywhere else, and I write about him. And then he had an ad on Instagram stories promoting a new music video, and I think I saw it like once a day, every day for like 2 weeks, and I couldn't help thinking like, this doesn't benefit him at all, and I bet every time I see it, it counts it as like a view. You know what I mean? And I don't know
Yeah.
if there's actually good value there until they kind of sort that out a little bit more. Like I understand the idea of maybe it knows because Facebook and Instagram are owned by the same company. It knows that I like Cousin Stiz on Facebook, so it wants to promote that ad to me. But I don't know. I've never actually bought ads on Instagram. Does it tell you like unique viewers versus total viewers? Like what kind of data do you actually get out of having a promoted post on those services?
It's been a while since I've done an Instagram one. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly, what it is. I think I did it as a one time, and I wasn't just real happy with the way it went. So it's something I haven't gone back to. And again, with our kind of little community being a little more niche, um, obviously we want to help the bands as much as we can, and we want people outside of Michigan to listen to them and to come to the shows when they're touring. But we're a little more insular, I guess, as far as the need for those things. and we're really kind of being on the DIY side of things. We're relying more on word of mouth and those likes and shares and retweets from friends versus paying paying the giants any more than we need to.
So let's kind of put that into an example. When you're what have you found are, I guess, the best ways to kind of raise word of mouth in these days, because it is such a cluttered space. Is it, I guess, gatekeepers like big sites? Is it, getting certain individuals to post about the album? Like, what is kind of the best marketing that you found so far in terms of actually kind of activating word of mouth?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, I would say the best thing that can happen is for the bands to play shows, as many as they can. One, because that's where they're gonna sell the most records, and they're gonna get people to see them that maybe aren't following them on social media, or haven't seen anything about them. So getting bands to be active and play shows, I think it is probably the biggest thing, and I don't think that's a secret to anyone out there. Otherwise, it's we still do go with premieres, and try to work with different sites, um, in DIY and kind of the circle that we're in. I think it's tough to get traction, with some of the gatekeepers and some of the bigger sites and things that are going on. The quote unquote tastemakers. Maybe I'm a little bitter about it because we don't always get that, but we have at times, and sometimes we don't. But I think a lot of it relies on for the size of we are. I mean, this label is basically run by me, and then each release working together with the band, and that's our team for every release. We don't have outside PR, or anyone else working with us right now. So we're doing what we can on our own, and most of that's coming through bands getting out and playing.
Maybe a better question or follow-up question would be, in the instances where you do kind of get one of those bigger name brand gatekeepers to cover an artist, is it really making a significant bump? I kind of go back and forth with this. I was actually looking at a press release this morning for, it wasn't even an old band, it was actually the new All That Remains record, and in it, it was like, it mentioned, genre gatekeepers, metal sucks, praise the album is so and so. And I was like, well, I mean, if you like metal, you probably read metal sucks, but for like new artists and breaking artists, do those bigger placements actually relate to more sales, or do you think it is still dependent on that kind of interpersonal relationships band members form with people at shows or on social media or whatever? So is the impact really that much different if it's on, a big site versus a small site that gives a damn about it?
I don't think so. I mean, in our case anyway, and part of that is because there's a lot of these big sites. I don't want to just talk crap about it, but um, there's so much being put out. It's easy to get lost in that, and there's a benefit to some of it, but some of the larger ones aren't necessarily putting out something that you're interested in all the time. So you may skip over it, um, versus a friend that you trust or another band that you follow, or um, someone you like, just talking about it on Twitter or on Facebook, saying I just ran across this, or check out my friend's band. Maybe holds a little more, but at the same time, I don't think it hurts at all either to do premieres, um, and reach an audience that you didn't have otherwise. So there's two sides to it, and the other thought I've had in the last year or so too is, um, with streams, being so important now with things like Spotify and Apple Music, and that seems to be the way everything's going. That it would be great to be able to premiere things, and maybe it is going this way, and you can tell me, where you can premiere a song, through a site while using Spotify if they had private streams or something like that. So you can start, tracking those fans right away and getting those streams and plays into the account versus, a private SoundCloud or a YouTube video or something like that. I think that would be great and really helpful.
It's so funny you mentioned this, because we were just on a call for Holics the other day, and we were talking about what we want to do next, and we're working on an embeddable player for song premieres and things like that. And we can't, so like watermarking technology doesn't work in such a way where we would be able to track everyone that accesses the song, but theoretically, you do get the information of where that person is when they engage with the track. And we were talking about whether or not that would be information that's valuable in a meaningful way. Because I couldn't tell you, Sam Smith from Brooklyn listened to the song. You would just know somebody in Brooklyn listened to the song. So I think that that would be more beneficial. My big thing with premieres, I always say this recently, I notice most premieres these days, if they're premiering on a blog and it's a sizable band of any kind, that song is immediately available on all the other streaming services. So the value of the premiere, I guess, in both directions is kind of lessened because for the site, if it's, let's say we already mentioned All That Remains, so we'll just keep using them. If All That Remains premieres a new song on Metal Sucks, it's almost assuredly also on Spotify or Apple Music or everything else at the same time. So if I'm somebody that's already listening to music and I'm scrolling my Twitter feed, the chances that I'm going to go to Metal Sucks and listen to a SoundCloud stream and stop Spotify versus just going to Spotify to see if it's on there, I think that's a big difference. I just wish, I guess what I wish ideally would be that Spotify or something would find a way to, I guess, editorialize or empower artists to editorialize new tracks. Because so often I find, I hate that, like, if a new song appears on those services, it's just like new release, here's the song, and you don't know anything about it. And if it's something that's very different, or if it's the band trying to like tell you a story or something, there's no supporting supplemental materials of any kind, and that's what frustrates me, I guess, as a fan. And I guess, do you think that would be something that'd be more beneficial if there's kind of a way to further empower artists through those big streaming platforms? Because I see the advantage of using the streaming platforms in general, just because if someone's going to listen to your new song, you might as well make 3/100ths of a cent for that stream.
Right.
I just don't.
Um,
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, thank you. You're saying, then I'll jump in.
I think this is SoundCloud just released some new tools to help with private sharing and song development, but I still feel like until Spotify finds a way to make you money off of those streams, SoundCloud, I mean, not Spotify, SoundCloud finds a way to make money off streams, artists are going to keep kind of straying away from it as a main form, because the new thing now is people don't buy records as much. So if people are going to access your music, you might as well make whatever you can off whatever amount of streams you can generate. So until like some kind of rev sharing appears on those services, I just don't think that they're going to have a big fighting chance. And with what Spotify is doing by allowing artists to directly upload music and distribute directly through Spotify and have the same cut as most major label artists, if not a better cut, because they don't have to have that middleman in there, I think that Spotify has a chance to really set the bar higher by adding some editorializedness. I know Apple Music editorializes certain things on their website, but they don't do everything, and they're constantly hiring new editorial staffs. I guess I'm kind of asking for the blog apocalypse right now, because if those services actually did start editorializing everything, the need for music blogs would pretty much vanish. But I think that it's an avenue that would ultimately benefit artists more.
Yeah, and I don't know if it would get rid of blogs altogether. It just may change their place in what they do. But if Spotify could, and the streaming services could become more, should be careful what I'm asking for, but more of a social sharing where it's a little more personal instead of just like you said, just okay, there's a song, I listen to it, and that's it. If there is a way to put a little more into that, yeah, I think it would help out a lot, and at the same time, it kicks a little bit back to the artist too, because those plays are going, in there, and they're getting their stats, they're making their 3 millionth of a cent, and growing their listeners and fan base. So from my view, I think that would be ideal. Is it going to happen? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you and I talked about this when you were here previously, but no one else has. What else does Save Your Generation have going on before, I guess, the holiday push? Are you one of those labels that kind of does like a big holiday sale and everything? I'm actually writing about this for the Holics blog right now, like how to approach the holidays. So, I guess two prong. Like, what else do you have on the horizon release wise before the end of the year? But do you also are you getting into like the whole holiday sales, or some people do like seasonal T-shirts or something like that? Like, what are you guys doing for the holidays, if anything?
We're not doing anything this year, anything crazy or special for the holiday. There, there will be one more digital release that will come out before the end of the year, and then hopefully still finishing some stuff up, pre-orders for another LP compilation that we can talk more about later. That should be up. I'd like it to be up by Thanksgiving, but that's close now. So maybe by the beginning of December, we can have pre-orders up for that, so people can start doing the, getting that in for their holiday shopping if they wish. But that's all we have planned right now. We have some stuff coming up early next year that is going to take a little bit of time to hash out, but we're kind of staying away from holiday sales. I think everything we do and put up is pretty reasonably priced as it is. Um, so yeah, nothing crazy this year. Keeping it pretty standard. Everything's up on Bandcamp right now for sale. I'm actually doing mail order today to get caught up. About a week and a half behind, so I'm trying to get those angry emails, but I understand. So I'm trying to get caught up today, and yeah.
Now, is that that pre-order you're talking about? Since I know exactly what you're referring to, is that something that'll be out before the end of the year, or is that like a first quarter of 2019 thing?
Yeah, it'll be a late winter, early spring thing probably. I don't have an exact date on it yet. It's kind of gone back and forth a couple times, and we don't have all the materials for it even in yet. So there's a few things lingering on it, but I do want to get the pre-orders up just to get that out there, and then we'll kind of update it as we go along. But it's it should do well, and we're excited about it. And now that actually I'm thinking about, there is another digital release that'll be out before the end of the year too. That just popped back into my mind. So yeah.
I want to talk. I want to ask you about physical releases because there's an article in Rolling Stone yesterday. It's that time of year for the annual "Is the album dead or is the album not dead?" conversation, which we've been having. I feel like since at least 2008 at this point. And Rolling Stone was the latest one to push out a thing. Basically the contributing factor to the article being created is this report from the RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America, for those at home, that basically said in the first half of 2018, the total album sales was down 25% versus the first half of 2017. And if that figure holds true for the back half, basically we will see a 50% drop in total album sales year over year, which is the steepest one we've seen yet. That goes to speaking to, I guess, how streaming is changing. But for a label like yourself, I know that you don't really do. I mean, you put out singles for records, but do you think that that's the continued plan is to do albums and EPs, or do you see a world where I guess you consider approaching it from a different direction, like doing singles or doing a series of singles that eventually kind of make one combined release, but changing your release habits because of consumption, or do you still see a lot of traffic and sales through physical media?
We do see a decent amount through physical still. Um, and part of what I don't want to do is dictate an artist or a band. I mean, at our level, and I don't think I need to, about how to release their art. I mean, we'll have discussions. I'll have some ideas, but for the most part, I want to say like, this is yours. I'm helping you get it out in the world. How do you want to do this? And I really want to leave it up to them. If they want to release 10 singles in 10 months, that's great. If they want to release an EP twice a year, great. If you want to do one LP and have a 12-month album cycle or 18-month album cycle, whatever they want to do, great. But I don't want to get in the situation of telling people what to do with their art. I just don't. I'm not an artist, and I don't think that's my place. I'm just kind of more along to help. So we'll continue to do physical. The mediums of the physical may change depending on the bands and what they're doing, but I think we will continue doing physical releases um, with a combination of digital and whatever we come up with when we sit down and talk about working together.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Do you I guess maybe another question would be like, do you have any interest in not doing physical media in the foreseeable future? Not dictating, but I mean, I guess what would the role be of a label such as yours in a world where you didn't have the physical media component? Like, do you feel like that's something that's kind of vital to what you offer artists?
That's a tough question, and I would say if we're not offering any physical media, then the role of the label wouldn't really be a label. I think it would just be kind of more of a consultant, or maybe it's a collective. Um, and yeah, it would just be kind of be like an advisor for someone who needs help and doesn't understand how to get things out. But it's all changing so fast in the way music's getting out. So yeah, I mean, maybe in 2 years that's a completely different conversation. Or maybe in 1 year, where if physical keeps dropping and then there's not a need to do it anymore, then is there a need for a so-called label of my size when a band has a community already and all the tools to do it themselves? Why not?
No, you make a good point. I think about it as, I guess when I was growing up, and I'm sure the same is probably true for you. I always looked at labels as kind of being a community focal point. Like I got into Victory Records through like Thursday, and then Victory signed Taking Back Sunday, and they signed Hawthorne Heights and Bayside and Silverstein, and all those bands kind of became this thing where it was like if you liked one, you probably liked all of them, and it was almost like an unspoken language. Like Drive Through was a similar label. I think No Sleep has pulled that off in a lot of ways, and in another way, I think you have. Even just talking about the kind of Lansing, Flint, western half of Michigan, but really all of Michigan at this point, kind of niche you have. Like if a person digs one band on the label, it's likely there's probably something else that you put out, and I don't know if there will never ever not be a need for that because I feel like so much of this specific community, the kind of DIY indie alternative world, is very much built on working together to get ahead because it's becoming increasingly hard to get ahead any other way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't know if at that point I guess it doesn't matter what you call it, but I guess I wouldn't see it as a label at that point. It's more of just a collective and a community
Yeah,
with aim.
I guess a good question would be like, what's the difference between like a management team or a publicist versus a digital only label? I mean, if you're promoting the releases through, but the artist, at least at the level where you're not fully funding the releases, or you're 100% behind it and you're trying to get a return on your investment. In a digital world, I just feel like that there's really that's even more risky to me than having physical media, at least because if you're doing vinyl, at least you know that there's kind of a market for that. But in terms of specifically looking to do only digital, I feel like it'd be such a gamble for especially smaller labels to take on.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let me ask you this: is there anything coming up any advice you would offer? I don't want to know why I said coming up. Any advice you would offer to somebody out there that looks at your label and looks at kind of some of the artists that you've helped kind of put into the world? Hot Mulligan being obviously the most recent example. You see something like that, people see that and they say, "I want to start a label and do something like this." Like, what is the advice you offer to those folks?
Whenever anybody asks that, or whenever I'm just talking about it, I think the best way to start is work with your friends, um, people that you trust, people that you know, people that you see on a regular basis, and do it for the right reason. It's it's fun. There's a lot that goes along with it, but work with people you like, and just like anything else, don't take yourself too seriously because it's hard, and there's a lot to do more than you can imagine if you haven't done it. And I know you have, and I know you understand what I'm talking about. There's just so much that goes on when you're running it by yourself or with one other person or two other people in just a small group. It's a lot of work. So if you don't really want to do it and love it, and you're not fully invested in the people you're working with and the releases that you're doing, it's going to show, and people see through that. So be invested emotionally, and love what you're doing, and work with people you like.
I think that's good advice. I always tell people that you have to appreciate the quality. You have to appreciate making memories or collecting T-shirts because that's basically what you are going to get out of doing the label. There's probably not going to be a giant financial return, but right now I'm working on moving my apartment. I'm going to move in with my girlfriend. She has a much smaller space than the place you're at my apartment, and it's a lot bigger than hers. So we've been kind of going through everything and sorting through belongings. And I was going through my clothes last night, and I was like, I have just a stack of shirts from when I had a record label, and I'm just like, this is pretty much this and a few test presses are pretty much all I have to show for several $1,000s in debt and a bunch of good
Yeah,
memories.
yeah.
And
That's I've been trying recently to. I was thinking of ways to kind of, I don't know, not necessarily catalog, but display what I've done. This is the 5th year of Save Your Generation, so, and we're almost at 50 releases. And if I've wanted to kind of have it up, kind of like around the house or in the basement or something, and I found a place online that does really cheap, like 8x8 canvas prints, and I'm getting one made for every release that I've done. So in the end, I'll have 50 of them, and they'll just kind of be a wall down in the basement that has the album cover of every release that I've done. So when it's all done, I'll have a place to look back and say that's where I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money, but a
yeah,
lot of good memories and a lot of fun.
I actually just parted with so when we did vinyl, I don't know how you separate test pressings, but there were two of us, so we each took a test pressing, and then we would give, like, if we got five, we'd give the band two or three, depending on, like, if there was a middle person, like if someone had brought us the artist, then that management or publicity person would get a copy, and then two for the band. And some of those artists, and this particular case was Microwave, and a kid actually reached out to me in my Instagram DMs, and he was just like, "Hey man, I talked to the band, and they all have a copy of this album as a test pressing. I talked to the manager that you had given a copy to, and I talked to your old co-owner, and he says he doesn't have a copy. So you're the only person that also has a test copy of this record, and I have a complete vinyl collection. I have test pressings for the other albums. I have every variant. Will you sell me yours?" And in that moment, I was like, I really don't care about this test pressing as much as this person very clearly cares about this test pressing. Like, I was like, it's just sitting in my closet. It's really hard to display test pressings because it's just like a blank vinyl. You got to be like, this was this thing. So I was just like, yeah, man, whatever. And like, he offered me some money, and I sold it to him, and I shipped it off to him. But it was funny because I think, especially when you're starting a label, you get that first couple of vinyl releases, you get those tests, and you're just like, I'm going to keep this forever. I did this thing. And when he asked me, I was literally like, I got to find it. I got to like go into my closet and dig it out. And then it's just like, yeah, man, I don't care. It's just one less thing in a box that I have. That's okay. You can have it. I have the memory of doing it.
A similar story. There's a variant collector of Hot Mulligan who's in Puerto Rico, and he was hitting me up for a test press of the Save Your Generation compilation we did, and there were only 5 of those made. And I was pretty adamant, like, you know what, I'm not going to sell these. There's only 5, and there's like 8 bands on the record. So anyone from the bands that reached out and wanted one, I gave those out, and then I held one back for myself. And he really, like, it was the one thing he needed. He had everything else. He had all the other test presses, all variants of the 7 inches, every tape, everything. And I eventually, he kept asking, and I ended up just giving it to him along with the stampers from the 7-inch that they did, the split 7-inch, which was, I mean, that's a one of one right there. And that was a cool thing to get to him. Like you said, it meant way more to him than it did to me. I think they were just sitting in a box. Not that I don't like the memories or anything about it, but for him to have that physically and have that piece of Hot Mulligan history that he's been chasing down for a long time, I think was cool.
Yeah, and I guess in a way you started, we probably both started a label with the hope that we would put out something that means that much to somebody. So when they finally come to you and they're like, "Hey, it actually means that much," you kind of have, there's a part of you that's like, "I kind of got to give it to you. I mean, this is what I asked for.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't
And
ask to have a collection of stuff in a box."
no, and I have plenty of those. So
Exactly. I got it all down to. I still have like a box of cassettes, and part of me is just like, I don't know what to do with these. I could display. I thought about doing your thing, like displaying them or getting some kind of shadow box to put them all in. But even then, I was like, I don't know. I like the memory of it. I don't need the stuff of it. Like I did this thing, and I can prove it if I need to. But I also have that moment where I'm like, what is the is it just an ego thing in me where I'm like, I have to be able to show people that I did this thing? And it's like, no, I really don't. Like, I'm okay. Like, I know I did it. Like, what am I trying to prove?
yeah, for me, it's I have young kids. One's almost 5 and one's 2.5,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess in that way, it's me a little ego wanting to show them that I was cool once
Yeah.
as they get older. And they say, Dad, but like, hey, look at what I did over there, and
Mm-hmm.
also just to keep them interested. Keep music or doing something like this open to them, knowing it's a possibility. Because when I was young, 13, 14, 15 years old, if someone told you like, hey, I'm going to start a record label, you'd be like, I don't know what that means or how to do that. No thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of keeping it open to them as something to show them, like, hey, I did this. If it's something you're interested in doing, you can do it too. And if you like music, let's figure that out too. So kind of more sharing and passing it down.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, if you keep the label going long enough, they can be the heirs to the label, the next generation.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, heirs to the debt. Well, I mean, I think we're all those. Um, well, that's no. I think that that's kind of beautiful, and I'm glad that you have a similar story because I did struggle a little bit mentally with like how okay I was with just getting rid of it because at some point I was like, do I not care anymore? And I was like, no, I have framed of the final versions of all these things, and like, what is somebody gonna fight me over whether or not I'm the one that put? Like, I was just like, what am I trying to prove to myself or to the world? But your case makes much more sense. Like I like my cats aren't going to inherit my vinyl, so I don't really have anything like that in my life just yet.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know what to do with it. Well, man, I don't want to keep you for too long, but can you? I mean, we've talked about Pinch a bit, but do you want to plug a couple of things for the label and like the socials and everything, so that people can know where to find you and know how to keep up with all you've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, easiest way, probably where I'm the most active is on Twitter, and that's SYG_RECS. Same on Instagram. That's where we're the most active. It's going to be a kind of slow rest of the year. Like I said, there's a couple things coming out, but nothing too much. And then some plans for some cool stuff coming out next year. And then it's just kind of wide open after like February. Just kind of see what rolls through and what comes up. So if there's any bands in Michigan listening and you've got some stuff coming up and you're interested in working together, let me know. I'm open. But otherwise, we just kind of keep business as usual. Try to get back on top of mail order and finish up this release that we're trying to get in and get up before Thanksgiving.
Well, I like it, man, and I appreciate you being willing to have this whole conversation again. For those that no one knows but us, but this is a completely different conversation than the last one we had. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought about it today. I was actually this morning. I was driving my girlfriend to an appointment, and I was in the car with her, and she's like, "So, what are you guys gonna like? Do you just do the same thing again?" And I was like, "I hope we don't," but I was like, "I'll just have to. We'll just come up with something. That's how the show works best." So, I did want to
Yeah.
say, last time you did reveal where the name came from, which comes from a Jawbreaker reference, and you just saw Jawbreaker. So, how was that experience?
It was great. It was in Chicago at the Aragon Ballroom, which was a really cool room. I'd never been there before. Smoking Popes and Naked Ray Gun opened, and yeah, it was great to finally see him. I hope they tour a little bit more, get to see him in some different places. That was obviously with the name, they've been huge to me. So it was cool to finally get out there, see them, and kind of cross it off the list. It was great. I don't know if I can actually put it in words, but it was awesome.
It's so funny because you sent me a photo from the show, and I was at Laura Jane Grace. But even when I saw it, I was with Landon DeFever, who you might know. He's a big supporter of a lot of the bands you put out. I was just like, look what Tony sent me. I was like, he was like, that's cool, and I was like, you don't understand. Like, this means so much to this guy right now. Like, I felt good for you.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh, this is like heaven for you.
it was great. I texted Chris from Hot Mulligan too. Like it's finally here.
The day has come. You going to any shows in the near future? Am I going to see you around? You got any other concerts coming up?
I don't have anything right now. The Menzingers are at Crowfoot this weekend. That's a possibility. I don't think I have anything on the calendar. Kind of looking, maybe try to hit one of the Hot Mulligan shows on this Seaway Trophy Eyes tour. But nothing planned right now. I got to take a look and see what's coming up.
Well, I mean, I hope I see you soon. I was actually just trying to think of what I might see you at, and I'm realizing that I've exhausted a lot of my concert calendar for the rest of the year. That's not work. I'm seeing Elvis Costello on Saturday,
Right.
which will be cool. That's more of like you might as well see him at this point. Get it off the list. And then I have a lot of like work related shows. Like I'm seeing Five Finger Death Punch for work. I'm seeing The Devil Wears Prada next month for work. I might see Steel Panther for work. So not a lot of shows that I necessarily am crazy to go to, but I'm going to for the story. And real quick before we end this, for people that are listening at home, you can follow Inside Music on all the podcast platforms. It's Inside Music Pod on Twitter. And after Tony is the guest today, our next guest on the show is, I forget his name, but a member of the band Unearth, because early 2000s metalcore will never die. And then I have a woman named Maya Ackerman, who's a CEO of a artificial intelligence company who's working specifically within the music industry. So that'll be interesting. We're going to talk about robots.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much, Tony, for coming on the show. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time today.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Well, great. It was fun, and hopefully we'll have you back in early 2019. We'll talk about what's happening February onward. We'll just bring it in quarterly.
Okay.
All right,
Good.
man.
Thanks,
Have a
Dan.
great time. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Was it just something that it's not? Were you really what you thought you are not anymore? All these words in my head, they make up pictures of us. When I try to relay the fact that I'm not enough, I know that it's not worth asking. I know that it's in my head. I am the photos in the floorboard, hidden away so they can't tell, haunting you from before. You'll find me out on the moon, dancing to the tune of myself. Sorry I didn't blow. And I will never be nothing, always be something. All these words in my head, they make up pictures of us. When I try to relay the fact that I'm not enough, I know that it's not worth asking. I know that it's in my head. Eyes closed tight, open wide, thrown in themselves and wonder why they're breaking out to find another way to die. Save for life. All these words in my head, they make up pictures of us.